What happens when high school students who've spent 7 months learning ways in which to advocate for arts education in New Jersey take the mic to share what they've discovered? Welcome to Art Isn't a Limit, an ArtsEd NJ Youth Ambassador podcast, an all youth-led show where we explore how the arts transform lives, communities, and possibilities. Born from our ArtsEd NJ Youth Arts Education Council experience, this podcast amplifies the voices of young advocates who understand firsthand why creative expression matters.
Hi, my name is Pari, and I'm a part of the Youth Arts Ed Council. Welcome to Art Isn't a Limit, an Arts Ed NJ podcast.
In this episode, we'll explore the powerful connection between grief and art, delving into how creative expression can help people, especially young people, process loss and find healing. Through personal stories from our council members, we discuss how different art forms, painting, music, writing, and more, serve as outlets for difficult emotions and why having healthy coping mechanisms matter.
We examine artists throughout history who have channeled grief and trauma into their work, exploring what we can learn from their experiences. Ultimately, we discover how art not only reflects pain but can also inspire hope, resilience, and build a meaningful community for those navigating through tough situations. Welcome to the podcast, council members.
Let's get started.
First, can each council member introduce themselves? Tell us your name, county you go to school in, and your favorite art form.
My name is London. The county I go to school in is Mercer, and my favorite art form is dramatic arts.
I'm Allie. I attend Bowen High School in the Hudson County area, and my favorite art form is performing arts.
My name is Alana. The county I go to is Essex County, and my favorite form of art is writing.
My name is Natalia. I go to school in Sussex County, and my favorite art form is playing the flute and piccolo.
Hi, my name is Mel. I go to school in Atlantic County, and my favorite art form is fine arts and performing arts.
Hi, my name is Pari. I go to school in Hudson County, and my favorite arts is performing arts and visual arts. Now, I'm going to ask the next question. How has art helped you personally through a tough experience, or why does this topic matter to you? How can art help people process grief and difficult emotions?
Well, starting off, when I was 6 years old, I unfortunately suffered the loss of two immediate family members, and I processed that loss through performing arts and watching like TV shows and movies, which has really helped me like escape my grief, even just for 5 minutes of joy. So art has definitely been a great process in dealing with tough emotions such as sadness and depression and anxiety. And this topic really just matters to me because it's important to spread the word about grief and how art can be such a great coping mechanism. London, how about you?
See, I lost my uncle in 2020, so it's hard for me to talk about, but it's something. And I expressed that through song and writing and through a lot of that. I definitely expressed it on the stage once it hit that point, and it really helped me in a lot of ways, more than one. So, art and music and really like getting my voice out there has always helped me, especially in ways that I've experienced grief in losing a immediate family member. And I'm sorry to hear that you lost two of yours, but I'm glad you were able to express it the same way that I was able to express it.
Thank you, London.
I just wanted to say to both Ollie and London that you guys are definitely really admirable, super brave for coping and going through this. I mean, I couldn't imagine how it feels to experience something at such a young age. So that truly does mean a lot. Um,
Thank you, Brie.
On to the next question. Who are some artists that have channeled grief or trauma into their work and how we can learn from them?
so, an artist that I actually wanted to speak about is I really like I guess during COVID, I kind of found her page and she became like she's, I guess, a lower artist, if you will. Like, she is not as popular, but she's pretty popular. So she was formerly known as a TikTok star. Her name was Nessa Barrett, and she was a very controversial person, but obviously she was kind of brought into the spotlight at a very young age, and she spoke about her experiences struggling with an eating disorder. And I thought how she shared that was obviously through music. She's an artist. She makes songs, and a lot of her songs are very close to her. They're very personal. They touch base on not only the physical and mental struggles of an eating disorder, but also the dealing with the grief and loss of someone very close to her. And throughout her performances as well, you can even see these sad physical changes that she goes through. But it was really big for me how not only did she make sure that she was putting something out there and using a creative outlet to express herself, but she was fully transparent with the viewers and people she shared her music with. And for me, I think that's one of the biggest things, especially as a growing woman myself. It's easy to lose yourself in the ideologies that people have built for yourself, like built for you, but it's really good to remember that you aren't alone. And I think that that was one of the biggest things that she did. So I really look up to her a lot.
Another artist that we can see that has channeled their grief/trauma into the work is Dove Cameron, who, when she was a young child, she witnessed her best friend get killed by her own father. Then, when Dove Cameron was 16 years old, her father, who did not murder her friend, it was the friend's father that murdered the friend. But Dove Cameron's father took his own life when she was just 16 years old, which, when she was 16, was just the start of her Disney days with the show Liv and Maddie. And so just imagine having to go from finding out your dad died to all of a sudden being on red carpet the very next day and pretending that everything's fine. Dove Cameron also, in her early 20s, experienced the loss of her good friend Cameron Boyce, and she actually got a tattoo in honor of him and has also written a lot of music that can connect with people's emotions, and a lot of people could just relate to her and understand their feelings with Dove Cameron's work. And I know for me as a child, I witnessed a lot of joy and laughter, not even knowing that Dove Cameron was struggling. And so I think it's very admirable how she persevered through her own struggling, which ended up also helping me through my struggles. So I think that's very admirable, and I think we can really learn a lot from artists like Dove Cameron.
All right. If no one has anything else to say, we can move on to the next question. How can art help build community for people going through tough situations? Natalia?
So, where I go to school in Sussex County, we've experienced a very strange, unusual sequence of events. We have been without a permanent music director for our band programs between the middle school and high school for probably over, I want to say, the last half a year. It was at least since June. And there are a lot of kids that I think they search for an outlet through music, so I think not having somebody to guide them is definitely rough. For the kids in middle school that were really passionate about going and starting up with stuff at the high school, I know it was rough for them. There were a lot of kids that really looked up to one of the guys, and I'll disclose, the director we had in June got arrested for doing inappropriate things in school, and it was really rough, and I know a lot of the kids looked up to him. And I know that was really rough for a lot of them. I know, I would hear stories up at the high school of, little kids crying, and, that's really sad. But I definitely, with the older kids, I saw a lot of community. I saw a lot of the kids searching to each other for help. I saw a lot of, hey, even though we're going through this situation, we want to keep things going. We want this to continue. We don't want to lose something that we love so much. So I know in June, I went to our board office and I was like, hey, we want to have a meeting. And we met with them, and we have a director coming, and I think it's 3 weeks, and we're really excited. But I really, it's such a good example and a prime example of kids coming together over something they love. And I think it's such a beautiful outlet.
I think
beautiful.
a way that art
And
can
Mel,
build
how about
community
you?
is through well, my grandfather passed away around almost 2 years ago, and he had two different families because he had kids from like two different women. And my father asked me to make a portrait of him because I really enjoy realism and portrait making. And my dad was like, "You should draw something. You should draw a picture of him that we can display it at the funeral." And whenever I visited him in the hospital before he died, he always complimented my eyes because he had dementia. So he didn't really remember who everyone was, but every single time I went, he would always compliment my eyes. And so I decided to put extra emphasis on his eyes when I was drawing because he always had like the kindest eyes I'd ever seen on a person. And I really wanted to draw attention to that through my art. So I made the portrait, and it was displayed at the funeral, and my dad posted it on Facebook. And I can't tell you how many people came up to me like from like both families saying, "Oh my gosh, like it's a beautiful drawing. You really like captured him." Like, cuz I wanted to bring life into his eyes because he admired my own. And so that was like the biggest focal point, and everyone said that that was really important to them because it felt like he was alive again. So it didn't matter which family they came from because they were all grieving together, and they all shared that like collective unity. And I really hope that my art um, brought them closer together because of that. And it was really a really big moment for me, and I felt so proud of myself. And I think it really helped everyone like process what was going on and like remember who he was. And I think that's really amazing.
Thank you so much, Mel. Um, Moving on to the next question. Why is it important for people, especially young people, to have healthy coping mechanisms like art? Pari?
Okay, so I feel like it's really important to not only have, the way of coping with like going to therapy or speaking to people. I think having a creative outlet, especially, is important to experience their grief or experience their emotions all in one, especially whether you do art or you do dance or cooking, baking, drawing, all of the above. There are so many outlets that people turn to truly embrace themselves. And starting off from a young age, it not only helps develop an idea of what you want to dedicate yourself towards and use it as a stress reliever, but it's also where you can find passion. And I feel like as a young adult or just a young person in general, having something that you're passionate about is extremely important. And it is one of the reasons why there are so many people today that progress because they have something to turn to, they have something to believe in. When you're very passionate about something, nobody else can tell you otherwise. And I think it's a huge confidence builder. And I feel like it's important that we start having something that we can turn to and put 100% of ourselves in because we're constantly being true to ourselves.
Thank you so much, Pari. Alana, do you want to touch on this topic?
Yeah, of course. As someone who's used art to process a lot of grief, my uncle passed away also in 2020, and it was really difficult since it was the pandemic and not everyone could see each other. That I used art in a way that would not only help me process my emotions, but try to figure out what was happening with myself, as grief is such a very difficult um, emotion for everyone, and not everyone processes it the same way. And so instead of turning to darker coping mechanisms like drinking or smoking or harming yourself, you can find something and make something beautiful out of it. And so when you have a healthy coping mechanism like art, you can turn your pain into something meaningful, and instead of repressing that emotion, you can turn it into reflection, and it'll help you build resilience and make yourself stronger.
Thank you so much, Alana. London, would you care to touch on this topic?
I gladly would, and it's nice to know that I'm not alone. Almost brought me to tears. Um, I think it's very, very, very important for young people to have it. Just because when it happened to me, it was during the pandemic, and I didn't have the space where I lived to have access to any of that. We didn't have a choir, we didn't have theater, we didn't have art, we didn't have any of that. We didn't have any of those classes. And I had to find my own way there. And I don't, if it wasn't for me having to find my own way, I would have been in a really bad spot. So I think it is very, very crucial for young people to have a healthy coping mechanism in a way that doesn't harm them, in a way that gets their actual voice out in every way possible. It's crucial for sure, and it's one of the most important things a person can have. Because art is a definitely very, very healthy. And there's also not healthy things. And to alternate that, it's important to introduce to kids that it's okay to express your emotions, and it doesn't always have to be vocally. It could be through a pen and paper, and it could be through a song on the stage. So I think that it is very, very important, and it's very healthy.
Thank you so much, London. Natalia, how about we hear from you? Looks like we have technical difficulties. Let's move on to Mel.
I think it's really important for young people to have healthy coping mechanisms because, like, some kids, they need that creative expression in order to, like, truly, like, form their identity and, like, find themselves as well. Like, of course, it could help them process grief and tough situations, but it can also cultivate a sense of self for them, especially if they are going through a hard time. Like, let's say, like, a kid gets, like, bullied at school. They can use art to overcome that as, like, a distraction and as a way to really, like, express who they are and bring that creativity and art into the world for other people to admire and see. Like, especially for me, it was theater. Like, I was a very lonely, quiet kid, and being on stage and being able to, like, truly really be who I was and, like, who everything I wanted to be, just being able to, like, put out there, like, who I wanted to be, like, just like the bravery of it was just, like, really important for me. And I feel like a lot of kids go through the same thing. Like, maybe they're, like, super duper shy, but they can, like, truly be themselves when they are in their element, when they are doing art, when they are being creative. It is so immensely important for people to have that outlet. So I think that's really amazing.
Thank you so much, Mel. Natalia?
So like I was talking about the middle schoolers before and like the experience they had with the whole thing with our band director, and I think they were so young that and it wasn't like the first time that had happened for the older kids, but they experienced something, it was new, they didn't know how to handle it, and I think the community that we had, they were able to find somebody to look up to. And I think that if they hadn't had somebody to go to, it would have went very differently. A lot of those kids, they come and they'd text me and they'd be like, "Hey, do you know what's going on with this? Is there a way that we can get something running?" And it was really beautiful, like watching these. I don't know. It's like 9-year-olds to like 11-year-olds search for ways to get around what they were going through. And I think that if they hadn't, I don't know what would be our program right now. And I think that's important to me. What the future generation has to offer is important to me, and I want to be able to create an outlet for them. And I think community is important. I think finding ways to grieve properly for them is also really important.
Thank you so much, Natalia. I totally agree with what you're all saying. For me, after losing my dad and my sister at the age of 6, art has definitely been such a huge coping mechanism. I love going to the movies, and just escaping for even just like 5 minutes has always been a great thing for me. And then when I got into performing at the age of like 10, I started to see like how I can transition my anger or my sadness and all my anxiety into the characters and give some of the best performances that I've ever given. I think we should move on to the last question. Alana, you want to take that?
Yeah, of course. What's one thing you hope listeners will take away from this conversation?
I could give the answer to that. Honestly, I hope that listeners know that arts is one of those things that are widespread. I think it's super important that it's not to understand that it's just drawing a perfect circle or performing on stage, but it is an outlet that's used to express emotions and physical abilities that people develop. I think it's important that art is an education, it's a study. Once you're super passionate about it, you learn from it. You not only learn what you can get from it, but it's also important to learn that what you can take from it and how you can apply it to yourself to grow and be a better person.
If there's one thing I
Thank you so
definitely
much, Puri. I definitely agree. Like, I hope listeners can take away that, like, art is so important in helping mold, like, how people, like, deal with their emotions. So that's very important. Anyone else want to talk on this?
I can touch on it. If there's one thing I will definitely want to say is that art is an emotion. Utilize it the way you wish to, and use your passion through that. That's it.
All right, I guess that brings us to our closing. Thank you for listening, and remember, you are not alone in what you're feeling, and through art, we can find both our own voices in a community that understands.
Thanks for joining us on Art Isn't a Limit, where youth voices lead the conversation about the transformative power of arts education. If you'd like to learn more about ArtsEdNJ's Youth Arts Ed Council, visit our website at artsednj.org.